Being a firefighter takes strength, not just physical strength, but mental strength too. You're trusted to run into danger when everyone else is running out. And while some people call firefighters heroes, and often they are, the truth is they also carry the weight of every life they couldn't save. It's a job that demands courage, discipline, and heart. But what if someone who wore that uniform, someone seen as a hero, turned out to be hiding something else entirely? This is the story of Kiyotaka Katsuta, a firefighter by day and a serial killer by night. As someone who covers real-life crimes and the darkest sides of human behavior, I've seen one pattern repeat itself over and over again. People ignoring red flags because they didn't have all the facts. That's why I recommend using tools like Circle with an S. It's a powerful tool that helps you run discreet background checks on people in your life. It's not about thinking everyone's a criminal. Most people aren't, but in a world where trust can be taken for granted, it's okay to be cautious. Whether it's a new roommate, a contractor, or someone you just met online, a dating app, you deserve to make informed decisions. So if you're living in the United States with just a name and state, Circle gives you access to public info. Things like phone numbers, past addresses, education history, even possible relatives. No apps, no extra steps. You just enter the info and in minutes, you have a full report crafted based on public records. This isn't about suspicion. It's about safety. It's about that little voice in your head that says, double check, especially when it comes to the people you're letting into your life. Right now, you can try Circle's background check feature for just $5.95 with a 3-day trial using my link in the bio. So give it a shot. You might be surprised by how much it tells you. You don't have to assume the worst, just stay aware. Let's start on October 27th, 1982. A police officer was out on patrol when a car suddenly rammed into his vehicle. The driver didn't stick around. Instead, he grabbed the officer's gun and vanished into the shadows of a dark alley. 4 days later, on October 31st, the same man tried to rob someone. But this time, his target fought back, trying to take the gun away. The man pulled the trigger. The victim didn't survive. Then came November 1st, another shooting, another person injured, still no arrest. The manhunt was on, but the shooter was always one step ahead. Fast forward to January 31st, 1983, yet another armed robbery. But this time they caught him, and what followed was the real shock. The man they arrested wasn't just any criminal. He was a respected firefighter. A man with medals, a man praised for saving lives. Kiyotaka Katsuta. Once they had him, the puzzle pieces started falling into place. He wasn't just tied to that one case. He was linked to at least 7 murders. But as the investigation continued, the numbers climbed. 22 murders, over 300 robberies, and even sexual assaults. The scale of his crimes stunned the nation. People couldn't believe it. How could someone live such a double life? How could a person spend his days rescuing people and his nights destroying them? So who was Kiyotaka Katsuta really? He was born on August 29, 1948, in a rural part of Kyoto Prefecture. He was the eldest son of farmers, but his family wasn't poor. In fact, they made sure he had the best. He went to a Christian nursery school before elementary school, not something every kid in the village did. To outsiders, he looked like a model child, the kind of boy you would expect to grow into a decent man. Growing up, Kiyotaka's parents were barely home. They were always working, and instead of time or affection, they gave him money. Buy whatever makes you happy, they'd say. It sounds like freedom, but for a shy kid like Kiyotaka, it just meant being left alone with no one to talk to. He wasn't the kind of kid who'd start conversations. He kept to himself, quiet, unless someone else made the first move. At home, things weren't much better. His dad had a habit of comparing him to his younger sister constantly. Why can't you study like her? Why don't you save money like your sister does? It was never ending. No matter what he did, it was never enough. And even though the family was fairly well off and gave him daily pocket money, Kiyotaka didn't feel satisfied. So he started stealing from his own mother. First, it was small. He'd take 500 yen from her wallet and blow it all in one day. Then, he escalated, stealing electric wires to sell, pawning off his dad's favorite copper basin, even pocketing money he found on the street instead of turning it in. At school, his performance slipped fast. Starting around 3rd grade, he just gave up. Instead of trying harder to outdo his sister, he shut down. His grades tanked, and when it came time to apply for high school, he told his teacher he wanted to get into a top-tier school. The teacher laughed, "Wash your face and face reality." And it was humiliating. But maybe that embarrassment lit a fire under him, because Kiyotaka actually buckled down and studied. He didn't get into a prestigious school, but he managed to enter a public high school's general course. Still, the pressure didn't stop there. He struggled to keep up academically. Eventually, he had to give up the regular track. His father stepped in and enrolled him in the agriculture department, hoping he would take over the family farm someday. And that only made things worse. Kiyotaka resented him deeply, and the stealing didn't stop. If he felt short on cash, he'd sneak into the school cafeteria to steal meal tickets. From there, things spiraled. He went from petty theft to stealing a car, then to pickpocketing random strangers on the street. More than 20 snatching incidents. One day in November 1965, while trying to grab a woman's handbag from a motorcycle, he was finally caught by a police officer on patrol. By that point, Kiyotaka had stolen goods worth over 1 million yen. For perspective, back in 1965, the monthly salary of a university graduate was just 23,000 yen. This was a massive theft for a high schooler. Because he was still underage, the court sent him to Izumi Juvenile Detention Center in Osaka. He served 6 months and was expelled from school. After his release, around 1967, he met Sachiko, a girl from a nearby town. She was a year younger, and their relationship seemed sincere. They talked about marriage, dreamed of a future together, but both families were against it. Kiyotaka's family looked down on Sachiko's background, and Sachiko's family didn't want their daughter marrying someone fresh out of juvenile detention. So, in 1968, they eloped. The two of them moved to Osaka and rented a tiny place called the Aomori apartment, the kind with shared toilets, no bath, nothing fancy. But they stuck together. They lived like that for a while. Eventually, in 1970, both families gave in and their marriage was officially recognized. At first glance, it seemed like a normal marriage, but Kiyotaka never let go of his need for freedom. He had a mistress. And not just once, he often stayed out at night, sleeping with other women, while Sachiko stayed home with her kids. She eventually found out. In February 1979, completely devastated, Sachiko tried to end her life. By then, they had 2 sons, Hiroaki, born in 1971, and Kazuya, born on December 30th, 1977. From the outside, they looked like an ordinary family, but behind closed doors, cracks were already forming. And the man who once stole for thrill was now building a much darker secret life. Now let's talk about his career. After getting out of juvenile detention, finding a proper job wasn't easy. Kiyotaka had a record, and people didn't forget that. But thanks to his father's connections, he got a spot at an auto parts factory. It should have been a chance to start over, but things didn't go smoothly. Not long after he joined, people at the factory started complaining about missing items, wallets, watches, things vanishing from their lockers. And once the rumors started, they didn't stop. Everyone knew about Kiyotaka's past, and suspicion naturally pointed toward him. He felt the pressure, the looks, people talking behind his back. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and quit. For a while during his early years living with Sachiko, he worked at a rental car shop. But again, things didn't work out. His boss often pushed the blame onto him whenever something went wrong, and Kiyotaka ended up shouldering responsibilities that weren't his. He quit that job too. Then in 1970, things seemed to change. He got a job as a truck driver for a transport company, and for once, he actually liked it. He was alone on the road, nobody micromanaging him, and the pay was decent. It was simple work, and it suited him. But that peace didn't last either. In January 1972, a female bank employee was raped and murdered in Kamocho, Nara City. Kiyotaka had no connection to the case. He didn't even know the victim, and his alibi held up. But the police came by his workplace to ask questions, and while doing so, they brought up his criminal past in front of his employer. That changed everything. Kiyotaka, who had built a reputation at the company as a hard-working guy, suddenly became the ex-delinquent. Even his boss, who had once trusted him, asked point blank, "Did you kill that woman?" Kiyotaka denied it, but he was frustrated, angry, humiliated again. And that is when his attitude started to shift. He began living differently, flashier. He bought expensive clothes, drank pricey liquor, and started seeing another woman on the side. From the outside, he looked successful, but on the inside, he was spiraling. Sometime later, a new fire station was established in his area, and his father, wanting him to have a stable, respectable career, pressured him hard to take the civil service exam. Kiyotaka didn't really want it, but he gave in, took the test, and passed. In 1972, at the age of 23, he became a firefighter. To most people, it looked like Kiyotaka had turned his life around, and in some ways he did. He worked hard, he was competent. In fact, he rose quickly, promoted to deputy chief firefighter in just 2 years. And by the age of 28, he was chief firefighter. Colleagues respected him. He won 20 awards, even claimed 2 consecutive national championships for firefighting performance. On paper, he was a role model, a hero. But all of that was just the surface. Behind closed doors, he was living a double life. Luxury car, golf club membership, expensive taste. But a firefighter's salary couldn't support all of that, not even close. So what did he do? He started robbing people again. Daytime, he was a decorated firefighter. Nighttime, he was breaking into homes, committing armed robbery. He had built a mask so convincing that no one questioned it. And then just 3 months into his job as a firefighter, on July 8th, 1972, he was arrested for causing a car accident. Strangely enough, he wasn't disciplined or charged, but once again, the incident dug up his past. At work, people began to see through the cracks. The old suspicions returned. The pressure started to build again. To deal with the stress, he turned to alcohol, a lot of alcohol. He spent ridiculous amounts of money on high-end liquor, almost like he was trying to drown the version of himself he couldn't control. He was slipping further and further away from the person everyone thought he was. Starting around August 1972, Kiyotaka began committing burglaries more regularly, mostly around Kyoto. During the day, he played the role of the perfect firefighter, but on his days off, he would drive to Yamashina, not to relax, but to break into homes. And behind it all, a loan shark was breathing down his neck. He desperately needed money. Then, in September 1972, just 5 months into his firefighting career, Kiyotaka took a darker turn. It was the first time he crossed the line from robbery to murder. On the night of September 12, he'd been drinking heavily at a bar in Nara. Sometime around midnight, he drove to Kyoto City looking for a house to rob. He wandered from building to building, checking for open windows, unlocked doors. But even after hours of creeping through neighborhoods, he found nothing worth stealing. Then, around 5 a.m., he noticed a back door in an apartment in Bessho town cracked open, just a little. About 10 centimeters, and that was enough. The apartment belonged to Hiroko Nakamura, a 24-year-old hostess at a local snack bar. As Kiyotaka crept in, Hiroko spotted him, and that's when things spiraled. He attacked her, but this wasn't just about theft anymore. In the chaos, something shifted. Seeing her struggle, seeing her afraid, it triggered something far more violent. Kiyotaka raped her while strangling her with her own pantyhose. When she stopped moving, he grabbed a mere 1,000 yen and fled. Later, it was Hiroko's partner, her common-law husband, who found her lifeless body, half naked on the floor, and called the police. Since there were no signs of forced entry or struggle, the police assumed the killer was someone she knew. That theory led nowhere. The case went cold, and Kiyotaka, he spent the stolen cash at a club and stayed in the area to keep stealing. 3 years passed. By July 6, 1975, Kiyotaka had already been promoted to deputy chief firefighter. He had awards, a good salary, respect. But he was still committing crimes. That night, he went to Suita City in Osaka, looking for anyone to rob. That's when he spotted Suzuko Fujishiro, 35, parking her car near her apartment. He waited. As she got out, he crept up and tried to snatch her handbag. But Suzuko resisted. She fought back and saw his face. Panicked, Kyota grabbed a thin packing cord from the ground and strangled her on the spot. Then he placed her body in the passenger seat, drove the car to a nearby pond, and left her there. He got away with 100,000 yen. Later, he torched her car, a Nissan Fairlady Z, in a parking lot in Osaka to erase the evidence. Her body was discovered the next morning, but once again, Kiyotaka was nowhere in the police's line of sight. By December 1975, with stolen money in hand, he bought a Toyota Century and got a golf membership and made nightly visits to expensive clubs. But of course, it wasn't enough. It never was. He borrowed more from the fire department fund, from banks, and when he couldn't pay it back, he simply traveled to another city to rob someone else. By March 1976, he was in Nagoya. Just past 2 a.m. on March 6, Kiyotaka was stopped at a red light when he noticed a woman, likely a hostess, sitting in a Chevrolet Camaro nearby. Her name was Teruko Ito, 32. He followed her. When she parked, he tried to grab her bag, but she screamed, called for help. Once again, fear kicked in, and Kiyotaka strangled her, this time using her own scarf. He stole 20,000 yen, then placed her body in the trunk and dumped her in a field in Nagakute town, Aichi. Her body was discovered the next day, but still no trace of the killer. Then came June 30th, 1977, around 2 a.m. in Nagoya again. Kiyotaka was lurking near an apartment complex in Minamigu when he saw a woman leaving her unit without locking the door. Her name was Akiko Masuda, 28. Kiyotaka crept in. He found 40,000 yen in cash and was still searching when Akiko suddenly returned. She screamed and he ran. But then he changed his mind. He turned back. He jumped her from behind and strangled her with a thin cord. When she stopped moving, he locked the door using a spare key from the entryway, as if nothing had happened, and just slipped away. When police investigated the next morning, they assumed it was someone close to her. After all, the door had been locked. They focused their attention on her boyfriend, while Kiyotaka walked free. By this time, Kiyotaka Katsuta's name was known nationwide, not as a suspect, but as a hero, a firefighter with awards, a loving husband, a father. He even appeared on a variety show with his wife Sachiko, smiling and waving, the perfect couple. No one suspected a thing. And then, the same month the show aired, August 12, 1977, he struck again. This time, it was an apartment building in Showaku, Nagoya. A woman, Yoshiko, a 33-year-old hairdresser, saw him lurking, trying to break into the unit next to hers. "What are you doing?" That one simple sentence was the last thing Yoshiko ever said. He strangled her. After she was dead, he pulled the diamond ring off her finger, worth around 450,000 yen. then carefully slid her body into the narrow space between the bed and the wall. Just like in his previous crimes, he locked the door with the key left in the front entrance and quietly slipped away. No one knew anything until August 18th, 4 days later, when her body was finally discovered. And while the public had no idea there was a serial killer walking among them, Kiyotaka's crimes were only growing darker. On December 13th, that same year, the same month his second son was born, Kiyotaka took another life. But this time, the method was different. He used a hunting rifle. His victim was Hiromasa Inoue, a 25-year-old employee. Kiyotaka didn't know him, and it wasn't personal. It was all about the money. Unlike the previous crimes where he broke into homes or followed women with handbags, this time he went big, targeting a massive cash haul. And he got it. He escaped with 4.1 million yen in cash and another 5.1 million yen in checks. Before running, he ditched the rifle near the crime scene. He had stolen a truck from the Nagoya Central Wholesale Market just before the robbery and left that behind too. This moment became a turning point. Kiyotaka realized that if he was going to keep living this high-cost lifestyle, the clubs, the women, the luxury, he'd need firepower. So later that month, in December 1979, he staked out a gun shop. When he saw a customer leaving with a rifle, he followed the man home, broke in, and stole the weapon. Now armed and emboldened, Kiyotaka went back on the hunt. On July 30th, 1980, Kiyotaka stole a Toyota Corolla and drove to a supermarket in Meito Ward, Nagoya, just before midnight. He waited for closing time, then ambushed Ichiro Honma, a 35-year-old employee. Holding him at gunpoint, Kiyotaka forced him to open the store's safe and hand over 5.76 million yen. Then ordered Honma to drive away, only to shoot him in the heart once they were clear of the scene. Then, on October 25th, 1982, he stole a Toyota Celica and lured a patrol officer with a fake tip about a suspicious car. When the officer arrived, Kiyotaka attacked him with an iron rod, stole his loaded revolver, and vanished. Armed with a stolen pistol, he tried to rob another supermarket on October 31st in Hamamatsu City, but he fled when an employee escaped and raised the alarm. Still determined, he planned another robbery, but this time avoided using his own car. At the Otsu service area, he hijacked a yellow van, threatening the driver, Mitsuharu Kamiyama, 27, with a pistol. Around 9:30 p.m., as they drove through Kusatsu City, Kamiyama tried to disarm him, but failed. Kiyotaka shot him in the chest, killing him instantly. And after that, the violence escalated. On November 1st, he shot and wounded a gas station clerk in Yoro, Kihu Prefecture. The man only survived because he was armed. On November 28th, Kiyotaka robbed a supermarket again in Yamashina, Kyoto, escaping with 1.52 million yen. This string of crimes became known as the Metropolitan Designated Case 113, and yet the public still had no idea that the man behind it all was a respected firefighter, praised on TV, smiling beside his wife. It seemed like Kiyotaka Katsuta was unstoppable. But as we all know, there is no such thing as a perfect crime. Eventually, the cracks show. On January 31st, 1983, Kiyotaka parked a stolen Toyota Corolla outside a bank in Showa Ward, Nagoya City. He had one goal: to ambush someone leaving with a large sum of cash. At around 1:45 p.m., he approached a 31-year-old man, the president of a local transport company, who had just withdrawn over 1 million yen to pay his employees. Kiyotaka threatened him at gunpoint, but the man fought back. He grabbed Kiyotaka's arm and wrestled for the gun. It wasn't just a scuffle. A few bank employees saw the struggle from inside and rushed out to help. 3 of them got injured in the process. Kiyotaka tried to fire, but the gun jammed or misfired. This time, he couldn't run. The police arrived, and just like that, Kiyotaka Katsuta was arrested. At first, authorities didn't realize who they had. They thought it was just one robbery. But after investigating the pistol and questioning him further, things began to unravel. He started talking, and what he said stunned the nation. Kiyotaka confessed to 8 murders. His gun matched several unsolved crime scenes. Investigators realized they weren't looking at a one-off criminal. They were staring at the man behind over a decade of unsolved robberies and killings. The mask had finally slipped. When the news broke, Japan was shaken. This wasn't just any man. This was the firefighter, the smiling public servant, the TV personality on a variety show. People had praised him and admired him. And now they were hearing he had murdered people without hesitation. He was charged with 33 crimes in total, 7 counts of robbery and murder, 1 count of murder, 3 counts of robbery and manslaughter, 2 counts of robbery, 1 count of attempted robbery, and 12 counts of theft. But police believe the true number was much higher, possibly more than 22 murders and over 300 robberies. While in prison, Kiyotaka kept his distance from other inmates. He eventually grew close to a Christian woman named Yuko Kurusu, and later, her mother adopted him. That's when his legal name changed from Kiyotaka Katsuta to Kiyotaka Fujiwara. His trial dragged on. It made headlines. Some demanded the harshest punishment. Others pointed to irregularities, including the fact that no psychiatric evaluation had been done before deciding he was fully responsible. Still, on January 17, 1994, the Supreme Court of Japan upheld his 2 death sentences, a historic first in the country's judicial history. One was for the 7 murders between 1972 and 1980, and the second for the handgun killing in 1982. Then came the end. On November 30th, the Ministry of Justice announced the execution of 2 death row inmates, and one of them was him. He was the last person executed in Japan before the turn of the century. That morning, after being told his execution would take place at 9:30 a.m., Kiyotaka wrote 2 wills, one thanking his parents, the other asking his sister-in-law to burn his belongings. He took a final puff of tobacco, then walked to the execution chamber, escorted by a monk. Before the noose was placed, he asked for his blindfold to be removed, so he could see his chaplain one last time. The priest recited the Hanya Shingyo as Kiyotaka quietly whispered the names of his victims. "I'm sincerely sorry," he said. His funeral was held on December 2nd, 2000, in Nagoya City. His body was cremated, bringing an end to one of Japan's most chilling double lives. He had fooled an entire nation, pretending to be a hero, all while becoming a nightmare in the dark. His story has been adapted into books, films, and documentaries, not to glorify what he did, but to remind us. You never truly know who someone is until they decide to take off the mask. It forces us to ask, how did someone like him slip through the cracks? Were people too focused on his image to see the truth? And how much trust do we place in uniforms, titles, and smiles without really questioning who's behind them? This case also reminds us that patterns of violence don't happen in isolation. Many of Katsuta's victims were vulnerable, alone, and overlooked. What does that say about the people we protect and the people we don't? So what do you think? Should systems for background checks be stricter? Are there others like him who hide behind status? Let's talk in the comments. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.